It is August 16th, 2024, and now that we are about a week and a half into Kiev's incursion into Russia's Kursk region, it seems as though analysts here in the US are scratching their heads more than usual, trying to figure out why in the world Kiev would do this, why put so many of their soldiers in harm's way, why take manpower away from the front lines where they desperately need it on their side, and what has transpired since then? Oh, you have Russia making advances around the key Donbass city of Pokrovsk. As we continue to keep an eye on where things stand on the battlefield, we're also keeping an eye on where things stand politically in Kiev and how the US is backing all of this. Because while the Biden administration may claim that they aren't entirely aware about what Kiev is up to, the evidence suggests the exact opposite. We got into all of that and more earlier with a special guest, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Andrei Martyanov, a veteran author and Russian military expert. Andrei, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
My pleasure, always, Rachel.
It's always good to have you on the show. I want to get your take on the latest here. It's been a busy couple of weeks, as it's been about a week and a half since Kiev launched an incursion into Russia's Kursk region. Now, there have been a lot of questions as to what the goal was here. It seems like even some Western military analysts are questioning why Kiev would do such a thing and why now. How do you see this plot by Kiev? Is it about trying to take territory, trying to terrorize the Russian population, or a little bit of both?
All of it, it's all of it, but primarily to demonstrate that Zelensky regime, and we have to look at a much larger picture, global picture, in which Ukraine situation is just one of the however important links. He is about to be, disposed of. We don't know how. I mean, he might be killed, under some strange circumstances, or he will be simply removed as the nominal head of the what is called or passes for Ukrainian state. So these are convulsions. Plus, there are convulsions on the NATO part to demonstrate that, considering the catastrophic situation at Pokrovsk operational axis, they wanted to demonstrate something, So they found the gap, which is whole other story. That will be the governor of a Kursk region answering to Mr. Putin, and where were those money which were provided for doing the initial fortifications on the border. But it's kind of detail, important but not. So they went into Kursk Oblast region, and they advanced 10 kilometers until they, of course, ran into the first line of Russian reserves there, where the Russian army is located. And there you go. This is where, as anticipated now, it's complete industrial quantity annihilation of everything they're trying to throw there. Obviously, they're sucked in now, but they have this stupid term, the creep, operational creep or whatever, So it's not creep. They're throwing now resources that take off from the other segments of the front. And guess what? Russians advancing extremely fast now on Pokrovsk axis. And they thought, because obviously they are not very bright people, they thought that Russians somehow would be, transferring reserves from Pokrovsk axis and the situation which is unfolding now in Kharkov area to Kursk. Well, they, as always, miscalculated. They transferred only elements, and that doesn't mean the whole brigade. That the element. One battalion here, couple of companies from there, and they transferred what is called Petnashka Brigade there, and obviously element of Akhmat Brigade, and Mr. Abtialaudinov is already in place. And those have been transferred not because Russia lacks forces, but because they are really good. They are actually have their specialty in fighting those diversionary recon groups. They are very good at locating them and then annihilating them. So this is now the mop-up operation on their part, and Sumy probably will become a Russian city fairly soon.
Yeah,
so that's the result.
It's been interesting to see, and that was the thing that I didn't understand about it, was exactly as you were saying. It seemed like there was this belief in Kiev that, if we go into Russia, they're going to have to divert all of these troops, not taking into account that where is Kiev getting these forces from? It's not like they have a surplus of
Yeah.
forces and they decide, oh, we're just going to send a few units over here into Russia. No, they're having to take troops from the front lines to then send into Russia. It's much more of an issue for Kiev than it is for Moscow right now. So, how do you see the state of things on the battlefield? I mean, it seems like even the New York Times is admitting that Russia is closing in on Pokrovsk. So, you have this continued advance by Russia. Where is that headed at the moment?
Um, First, Russians not gonna go towards Kharkov, like, go into Kharkov and take it. You don't want to go and fight in the million populations urban center, especially which is not friendly to Russians. But yeah, they advance in Kupiansk. They will take their bridge over Oskol River, which is transferred, into the operational, so to speak, space. So Pokrovsk will be taken. Toretsk is essentially now the fight is within Toretsk. Today, Marat Khairulin provided excellent, report on that. So yeah, it's advances all over the front. So not to speak about that, Russians have no reason to rush anything. They want them in. Come on in. And now, when most of the civilian population have been evacuated in Kursk area, you have a repetition of what is called krimki. When they this so-called, the bridgehead, they try to, which of course, I mean, they are doing this pretty much the same, but on a larger scale, because you're talking suddenly in Krimki, you were talking about company, max battalion size, forces constantly present. Here you have the brigade size, the different estimates. They threw in about 12,000 people around that. So not all of them, of course, the combat troops, the support troops and things of this nature. But yeah, judging by the number of the POWs Russians taking, and even Wall Street Journal admits it's over pretty much. It's just today Wall Street Journal like, hey dude, it's catastrophe. Okay, well yeah, and as my friends, military professional, combat veterans, senior officers, they laughed and saying, when this operation will be studied in Academy of the General Staff, people will be sitting with their jaw dropping, on the floor, like trying to figure out why was that, because it has no sense. But then again, when you have people from France, Bundeswehr, and Americans, and not to speak about those British guys who think that they're big game, they are chihuahuas basically militarily. So they plan this. That's what you get. I mean, those people do not understand what they're dealing with operationally, let alone strategically. And yeah, as I already stated, I underscored it, and this is now confirmed. Russia didn't transfer anything from the front lines. In fact, those initial brigades which have been accumulated in Kursk region, they are being actually transferred to the front on different operational axes, which are, of course, as you might expect, Pokrovsk, which we see there. I mean, it's catastrophe there, okay, for armed forces of Ukraine, and the other directions. So simple as that.
Yeah, and I think that's good to keep in mind exactly as you were laying it out there when it comes to the way that Russia is approaching this. They're not trying to just kind of steamroll through and have everything done in a matter of weeks. There is a lot of patience there. And going back to the question of what in the world was Kiev thinking, because I know that's what many people are thinking right now, the Washington Post reported that Ukrainian forces also attempted to attack Russia's Belgorod region simultaneously with the incursion into the Kursk region, but were met with stern resistance and suffered heavy losses. It makes me wonder who is making these decisions. I mean, is it the current commander in chief, Alexander Syrsky, or is it the geniuses in London and Berlin and Washington who are sitting there thinking, oh, we'll make headlines for a few days saying, Kiev got troops into Russia, and then they don't care about the fallout after that?
Well, Mr. Patrushev today came out and said United States is behind all that, and I can totally see it. And there is a kind of game here. It's a very simple game, really. It's for the kindergarten, and together with this circus. I mean, it's a complete freak show of the, blame game for the Nord Stream 2. You see, the plan was simple. We attack, get Russians into Ukraine or whatever, get them to surrender essentially, Putin regime falls and, well, obviously it never materialized. And then suddenly the question of the Nord Stream 2, which they were hoping will go away once Putin's regime falls, well, Putin regime is doing actually quite well. Let's put it actually better than ever. And suddenly you have to face the situation with you understand not everybody is stupid in Pentagon. Okay, let's put it this way. There are smart people. There are especially level of those colonels and brigadier generals who deal with the issues of operations and who actually study things. Not all of them are stupid. They understand where it is all going. They understand the whole vector. And suddenly, well, let's put it this way, considering the fact that the Zelensky is being literally sunk by the mainstream media in the United States, Biden needs to get rid of this guy. They think that they would get better negotiation position, which is stupid because Russians say now we're not negotiating anymore. And then you suddenly have that, oh my God, somebody will be charged with the act of the international terrorism, which is, of course, blowing of the Nord Stream 2, which it is the act of the international terrorism. And suddenly, well, today, Poland have been now accused of blowing Nord Stream 2 by this clown from the BND, the intelligence from Germany. I mean, it's a circus. It's a freak show. Okay, it's a kindergarten level, and then suddenly they're running around. Of course, they're pointing out now fingers on Ukraine because they are the guys who will be, holding the bag when it is all over. But the problem is, for them, this problem is not going to go away. Now, Russia is not negotiating. Russia will do what? Oh my God! If you follow the press, Russian press, as of last week, including Nikiforova's article in RIA, no less, when she said Ukraine must not exist. Period.
Wow.
That's the change in the mood of the Russian population, overwhelming majority. There you go. That's where we're going.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating to me too, because the US has gotten away with so much, right? They go into a country, they overthrow the government, and they convince the public to go along with whatever it is that they want, or at least a significant portion of the public. But in Russia, you have the complete opposite, right? Every attempt by the US to say we're going to sanction your economy, we're going to blow up your pipelines, even if we don't admit fault for it, we're going to now, plan to send Kiev's troops into your country to terrorize the civilians there, it seems as though it has made a significant portion of the Russian population, the overwhelming majority, I would argue, more hardened in the stance of, okay, we have to work to stop this. And when exactly as Putin is saying, he's like, look, we can't negotiate with Kiev, right? If they're going to keep terrorizing us in these ways, if they're going to, he's given multiple offers for negotiations, they have refused them. He's going, look, we're not dealing with sane people here. Is that something that when it comes down to it, you think the West is prepared for? The fact that Russia is looking at, look, this does not end until not only there is no more Kiev regime just propped up by the West, but there could possibly be no more Ukraine as it is known today.
Well, you see, that's the problem with now with Washington, not in the United States. Americans are decent people by and large, and these are normal people in many respects. I mean, they are patriotic and this and that. But you have Washington; it's completely insulated from anything real in outside world. It doesn't know outside world. United States militarily, if you remove the basically the nuclear deterrent. And not to say Navy, the U.S. Navy is still a magnificent force, albeit it's becoming obsolete except for the nuclear submarines. But militarily, United States is a small game. I mean, army, they can go and wreak havoc, no doubt about it. In some country like Afghanistan or Iraq, that's about the level. They cannot fight the real war in Europe. They don't have the table of organization and equipment for that. They have no ability to sustain it campaign. So now but they, for some reason they thought that if we lose all wars we fight, for some reason we're best in the world. I don't know how it works. It's like, each 7 years I declare bankruptcy. Boy, I am good financially. So it's pretty much, and this is what it is. And then suddenly they get into the superpower, and not just nuclear superpower, economic and military superpower, which even Trump admitted it's a military machine. They defeated, Hitler and, Napoleon, and the United States not even in the same league in terms of the combined arms operation and continental warfare. And so they go in, they think that it provides these holy weapons, which do not work. And they always thought that, they were so good. No, you're not that good, actually, guys. And you've been shown, And then suddenly they continue to make same mistake, and they don't have plan B. They never had one because they never studied their lessons. They never learned them. And so now you have the political elite, which is highly uncultured and very primitive, really, in terms of the outlook. And it was the precipitous decline since the last administration of George Bush Sr. When you had the people of scale there, and they might not have been good people, but they certainly were statesmen. You don't have statesmen. You have political animals which are really in it for personal enrichment and staying elected. That's pretty much it. So these are not the people you can negotiate with. And as a result, they are lost. There is a acute sense of panic. It's like, again, look at the last 2 days of publications in the US mainstream media. When you have, again, Wall Street Journal, which was the, warmongering, tabloid, which was, waving hands at let's crush those Russians 2 years ago. Look what they say today. It's over pretty much, So, and as a result, they don't know what to do. They are in this panic mode. And what can I say? It could be, how to say it? It's difficult really to predict now where it will all go. But what we know now, Russia is not talking. It's not negotiating. And one of the signs was also their refusal to, communicate on the issue of the START. Because Russia is so, and you can quote me, I wrote last book, United States lost the arms race, especially nuclear arms race. It just simply lost it, big time. The gap is colossal and it's growing.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me, too, the fact that you have the US in this position where it has gotten really comfortable, especially over the last couple of decades, just being this superpower that goes into countries like Afghanistan and Iraq and does what it wants there. But then it moves into this proxy war phase now against Russia, trying to start a proxy conflict against China. And yet, when you look at what they've done for Kiev in the last 2.5 years, right? They've sent all of this money, all of this military aid. They've sent Abrams tanks, which they weren't going to send. They've now started to send F-16s. And it just makes you wonder, okay, what has it actually done for Kiev, right? What has it accomplished for them? Instead, it seems as though it's had the opposite of accomplishments. You've had them stay in this ongoing war, and now they're worse off because of it. And now going back to the topic of the possibility of replacing Zelensky, I know for the US, they're probably sick and tired of dealing with Zelensky at this point. They created this monster, and now they're looking at him and going, okay, it's time for someone new. Would that have any change at all, or would that just be for basically publicity reasons? It would give the US a few months to say, hey, look at the new Ukrainian president, as if something would change while Russia is still going on the exact same trajectory.
Yeah, it's mostly for publicity. It's mostly to, especially considering the election cycle and elections in November, they need to show something. It's a classic, do something attitude, because when you don't have any practical solutions, which they don't have any military or any political solutions. So let's substitute Zelensky with somebody else, and we can say, hey, you see this. But the problem is, of course, for them, it's up to Russia now to decide what kind of the president Russia will prepare for the United States prior to the elections. Yeah, and that's what Operation Strategic Initiative gives you. So, yeah, and a lot of fluffy talk, a lot of this pathos and this rhetoric, but behind it, it's pretty much empty. They got into the game. Um, yeah, they miscalculated so dramatically. Even Hitler miscalculated less. Okay, but these guys miscalculated. But then again, you know what? United States doesn't have Prussian-style general staff, and it doesn't have the generals who actually came to the Soviet Union already with incredible winning record. Basically subjugating the whole of Europe and wiping out all those armies in Europe. This is not even the same league. So they decided to go at the country which defeated Hitler and Nazism. So, but yeah, when you don't study your story and history, yeah, you're not gonna get far. And Russia is already stated the key issue here. No matter who will be put in there in charge, it changes absolutely nothing. There is a rumor they want Avakov now. Avakov is the guy who personally insulted Putin and his family. So yeah, I mean, good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to think, and I know we went through this with the change from Zaluzhny to Syrskyi, and it's like, okay, is anything going to actually change, right? Is anything going to, I guess, help Ukraine get more gains on the battlefield? But at this point, it seems like the Kursk invasion is some sort of almost Hail Mary attempt by them to, I guess, make headlines in the short term. I know it's been compared by some to Nazi Germany's Battle of the Bulge in 1944. Is it possible that this is Kiev's last hurrah of sorts? And that's not to say that things just fall apart immediately after this, but that is to say that they are trying to come up with this, outlandish attack. They carry it out to, I guess you could say, a certain extent, and then it's all decreases after that.
Yeah, it's already decreasing. Some of those units in Kursk Oblast, they dug in. They will be obviously pried open. Already is happening, as I already stated. No, it's going to end now with Sumy becoming Russian. So Russians already turned off light, electricity, and sewer in the city of Sumy, and those fobs are flying beautifully into the location of including the foreign mercenaries and the officers of NATO who thought that they can handle it there from there. So yeah, it's pretty much anticipated, So this is a few days of, headlines from the sympathetic press, which is essentially propaganda in the West, and then yeah, what are you gonna do? Well, they try, as I already stated, they try to throw those groups all over the border. They are met, annihilated, and there you go. That's it, And how many reserves they have? They still have some cannon fodder concentrated in Western Ukraine. Those are, well, even those are not anymore that eager to fight, but they probably have another 150,000 people stashed, in the Western Ukraine. But this isn't the case. Russians decide to really drive to Lvov. I don't think so. They will provide this cannon fodder now for the front. And don't forget, even before that, Ukraine was essentially two different states, and we'll see what Russia now decides to do, because yeah, the demand in Russia among public, an overwhelming desire of Russian public now is to finish off Ukraine as a state, as or so. And
Yeah.
after that, we just can sit here and guess what General Staff and Security Council of Russia decide to do now.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot at stake here, and I know that in so many ways it did not have to be this way, but yet you have
Yeah,
Russia in a position where they have just been pushed to this point by not just the Kiev regime, but by the West as a whole, and
yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. But I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down the latest here. Andrei Martyanov, a veteran author and Russian military expert. Thank you so much for your time.
My
And
pleasure, Rachel. Anytime.
if anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure you subscribe to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. If you want to support my work, you can also check out my